Hey guys, we're live here, and we have our new guest, who's a esports doctor. If you want to introduce yourself for people that may not know who you are and your kind of qualifications.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Casey Thomas. Hi, everybody. I am unfortunately not a doctor. I wish I could take that
Oh,
name. Some
sorry,
people
my
do give it to me.
bad.
It's all good. I'm, I guess, what you call a performance dietitian, which basically means I tell people what to eat in order to perform better. I do have a little bit of a strange background though. Before I was a dietitian, I was pre-med, so my parents did want me to be a doctor, way back
Oh
when.
yeah.
And when I actually went and shadowed some doctors, I was like, this is not for me. I can't do this. So I bailed on the doctor route, much to the dismay of my parents. And I actually worked in clinical research for about 5 years.
Oh nice.
And specifically, we were working in the private sector, and we were looking at various supplements and pharmaceuticals and their impacts on various aspects of cognition. We were working with both like a healthy population and a clinical population. So I worked with a lot of like depression, ADHD, that kind of stuff. That gave me my first taste of some high level athletes, just which sounds a little bit strange, but what actually happened was, or what does happen is, if you look at the scientific literature, you can actually predict what the next round of performance enhancing substances are going to be.
Oh really?
So I might be like dating myself here a little bit, but like, Lance Armstrong and the EPO, days, all that kind of stuff. That came on the heels of all of this research that was done in kidney function to assist with people who are having issues with making red blood cells and all that kind of stuff. So about 10, 20 years later, boom, it hits sports, and that exact same thing happens like all the time, where you just kind of look 10 to 20 years ago, and that's probably what the next, performance enhancing substances are going to be. And anyway, I bring this up because I had some savvy people reach out to me when I was working in research, and they were saying, "Hey, what's the next big thing that I can take
Everyone wants
that
an
isn't going
edge,
to
right?
be yet tested for?" And so yeah, exactly. Everyone wants an edge. And so from that, I was like, this is really fun. I like doing this. I like working with this demographic. So I went back to school, and I was like, the only thing that I can go back to school for that kind of fits what I was just doing with this advisement work with these athletes was to go become a dietitian. And so I went back to school to become a dietitian. I created a sports nutrition program on campus. I did a thesis project. We were working with a team known as Echo Fox in League of Legends.
I remember them.
We were,
They came in to see
yeah,
us for a little bit.
yeah, and I actually got to meet Rick Fox when I was working with
Oh
him, which was
nice.
fun. We did all these cognitive tests and stuff with him, so that was fun. That was fun for me to do that, and it's mainly because like I'm a gamer at heart myself, so I enjoy doing all this stuff too. And after that, I did go work in traditional sports for a little bit, so I oversaw the sports nutrition program at UCLA. Since then, I've worked with a lot of like professional traditional teams, a lot of collegiate programs and traditional sports. But my claim to fame was always nutrition for cognition, or supplements, or whatever kind of strategies for cognitive faculties. And my undergraduate degree actually was neurobiology, which was kind of that thread into the research, which was my thread into this. Anyway, so I was able to leverage a lot of these strategies to enhance things like hand-eye coordination in baseball, or shooting accuracy in basketball, and like this kind of stuff. And being a gamer myself, and I had some gamers and some other cognitive people kind of reach out to me. And by other cognitive people, I mean like I've worked with like chess grandmasters and things like
Nice.
that. So I've had these people reach out to me and ask me like, "Hey, can you help us out too?" And I was like, you know what, actually I can. You're the perfect people to do this. So it felt a little bit like returning to home, coming back, working with gamers. I've been working in the esports scene for over 5 years. I still teach, so I keep my foot in the academic world. I still teach at a couple of universities. I teach at both UCLA and Cal State LA. I work with a lot of esports individuals, professional teams. I've worked with a lot of many, even like international, like pro teams at this point. And I do scientific peer review for journals still. And that's kind of everything that I'm doing right now. I'm a new father also, so my time has been a little bit more
Yeah.
limited. But yeah, sorry for the long-winded answer, but that's me in a nutshell.
Well, congratulations on your kid, and I know it's not as tough as you, but I just got a puppy, and it's a lot of work as well. Not
Those like,
comparable, but it's just the sleep. Sleep has
yeah.
been rough.
How old did you get the puppy at?
3 months. So
Yeah,
yeah, so we try to crate train, and you know how that goes. It's a
that's
lot of
brutal.
barking. Yeah,
Yes.
I have a second mattress right next to the kennel, so I sleep right next to her to try to get her to sleep. Because if I leave the room or anyone leaves the room, she starts freaking out. So yeah, it's been
Yeah.
my life a little bit. But just yeah, obviously your qualifications are pretty extensive. You've been doing a lot of different things. It seems like when you say you did research on I don't want to say like performance enhancers or cognitive enhancers. Were those specifically like pharmaceutical type of products, or are they like also natural stuff? Like, were you also looking at like, um, like how you can have like a root extract that can like improve? Like, is it both or is it just one?
Yeah, it was a little bit both. So we were a research site that was very adept at recruiting people for research studies. We had a very centrally located office. We had an inpatient unit, like ward. We also had like a lot of different doctors and things who were also working with us. And so we had a very good referral network. And because of that, and we were in the private sector, we were able to contract with a lot of different like pharmaceutical and supplement companies who wanted to do research studies and say like, hey, if you want to do a research study, we can get you the people to do this study. You tell us what study you want us to do, and we'll be able to run it. And so that was kind of like what we did was we ran the research trials for these pharmaceutical and supplement companies. So to answer your question, like it was kind of a wide gamut. Like we even worked with a couple like universities who just needed help with like recruitment and things like that, and like staff to run the studies. But yeah, from pharmaceutical type products to supplement and like extract type products to more even like we did a couple like cognitive or like CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy kind of trials and things like that. We had some psychologists working with us, so we kind of did a lot of things. The common thread was simply the brain, really. The brain was the common thread amongst all of them, but we did all
It's an
sorts.
important part of the body.
Yeah, absolutely.
My cat is being needy right now.
That's okay.
Yeah.
My dog, one of my dogs is in the background. You can see him.
Oh, nice. Yeah, having a little nap back there.
Yeah.
So obviously, I feel like a lot of the research, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. I would say like the funding is what coming for in terms of like sports performance is probably coming from uh, like NBA, NFL. Those are they the ones doing like is it the high tier sports that are spending the money on these studies? Because I feel like esports is a little behind, but I feel like in the very near future, I feel like with all the money that we have and all the salaries and all the investments people are putting in, they're going to start caring a little more. But I don't think we're quite there yet. Like, how do you think being on the more research end?
Yeah, I would say so. First off, funding is really the prohibitive factor there for a lot of research. Research trials are inherently extremely costly to conduct and carry out, between the facility, between the staff that you need, between like paying the patients to do things, between the equipment and all this kind of stuff. Like there's a lot that goes into conducting a research trial, and just by and large, they're extremely expensive. So where are you going to get that money? And the most well-paying industry is definitely like pharmaceuticals. So big pharma has a ton of money, and they will usually pay for those trials themselves if they believe that the trial will potentially lead to some return on their investment. And similarly, supplement companies will do similarly, but supplement companies have less vested interest in. I'm trying to be very political here. So like supplement industries, even if you have let's just be candid, shall we? So like even if you have a garbage product but you have a good marketing team, like you can still make a lot of money in supplements.
Yeah.
You can do that in pharmaceutical too, but it's a little bit harder, and there's a lot more regulations tagged to a pharmaceutical grade product that's marketed to like
You have one study that shows like a little bit of a benefit. You hype it up. You slap your name on it. You get all the the sports people, the pros to mark. Yeah, I 100%. I've seen it in bodybuilding so many times. Take this, and you're gonna grow 20 pounds of muscle in a month, and it's just like it doesn't work that well.
Right. So all that to be said is where is the money? And the money is in sick people by and large. The money is not in healthy people. So when you ask a question like, who's funding the sports literature, right, or the sports research, most of this population is inherently healthy. And there's not actually a whole big industry in trying to make someone exceed their natural maximum, like genetic ceilings or natural human capacities or faculties. So there's actually a very tiny amount of money being funneled into sports literature and into like performance enhancing strategies for sports. So usually what actually happens, there's a couple different ways that people do this. One is you have industry funded research, because it's like, who's going to pay for it? Well, the government's not going to pay for it. You're not going to get grants and scholarships for this because it's not a public health kind of thing in the same way that maybe like type 2 diabetes or obesity is, right? So no one really cares about like, oh, how can I shave a couple seconds off my marathon time, except the people who run the marathons. So those people, usually what you see is that in sports, a lot of times it's industry funded, which adds a layer of bias to it. It's this financial conflict of interest because they want their product to succeed so they can make more money, right? So that kind of sucks. And that's that the second strategy is you do stuff in-house. So I've worked with a lot of teams where what we do is we have like these published white papers in established organizations or teams. So like you might have some strategies that like one particular NFL team does, and they don't release those to the public because they don't want anyone else to get access to the secret sauce. So then what they do is they conduct this in-house literature and this in-house research. They pay for it themselves. They do it on their population that they have, their captive population that they have. And then they don't release that out to the world until like, 5 or 10 years have passed, and it's mostly outdated anyway at that point because they've moved on past that strategy or protocol or dietary or supplemental strategy. So in traditional sports, the money coming is very small. And usually, like I said, it's going to come on the heels of medical literature. So like the EPO thing. And then we realize that, okay, we do this medical stuff first, and then we realize it might have some implications into traditional sport. And in esport is even tinier. I can count like on my hands the amount of literature that's been done in a true esport population, not recreational gamer, like true esport population, with specifically examination of like some nutrition or supplement protocol. It's almost non-existent. And so most of the products that are out there, what they're doing is they're pulling data from parallel research, and a lot of times they don't expect anyone to do their due diligence, and so they can scam you. But I do truly hope that with the growth of esports, like I've been seeing an uptick in the amount of interest in this. There are some campuses that offer scholarships for esports programs like that, these days. And so between that, I think you're going to see a large move into, maybe not a large move, but you're going to see a bigger and bigger move where research is starting to focus on this. And we're already starting to see that research is focusing on like the cognitive worker, or like the tech jobs, right? Like these people who are doing something that's inherently cognitive focused, there's a vested interest in wanting them to not have things like burnout, less sick days at work, and, improve focus across a full day to maximize productivity and those kind of things. And those are almost one-to-one to esports, not quite, but almost one-to-one to esports. And so I think we're starting to see some of these tangential areas focus on this. And I think it's going to slowly trickle into esports. And so I'm very hopeful and optimistic. And I've had conversations with labs about, what the next 5 or 10 years are going to look like. And I'm, kind of on the edge of my seat waiting to see what comes out.
No, it's pretty cool. I mean, how you say like most of it comes from sick people's data, which makes sense. That's probably where the money is, and also you want to help people, and not just do research for no reason for millions of dollars, I suppose. But even something as simple, and I'm sorry I always bring up bodybuilding, but like a lot of the drugs they take is actually based off of like research done on sick people, like sick kids, women with cancer, because they've never actually done anything on sports athletes, right? Like you're saying with like Lance Armstrong and stuff with the the red blood cell count and stuff. It's like, yeah, they're all taking it from medical, like maybe Russia's doing their own experiments for like specifically because the government kind of funds their doping, but I feel like
Icarus. Have you seen that?
No, that's a really good one, and it just like it shows like the disconnect, right? You have like an entire government or like country kind of like backing these athletes, and in North America, it's just kind of like, well, like, can I get a scholarship? Can I get funding? It's a little bit different, but I just wasn't sure how the actual like studies and funding would go. So you're saying they're very expensive. So for one product, like you can tell me after like what products you think are the best for performance, cognitive function, because I think just personally, I think caffeine's like a little overrated. Like not that it's bad or not useful. But for example, if you were saying like the studies are very expensive, so like for example, I really like lion's mane.
Hmm.
Like how expensive would it be if we wanted to run like an esports kind of like we take a 50 level 10 face it players or something, and we give them lion's mane and 50 a placebo or something and 50 caffeine, and like kind of like how difficult would that be, or how costly would that be?
I mean, honestly, if you are bootstrapping it, like there are ways to do this where um, you can almost do it from like grassroots, where it's like, okay, I have a team who's willing to volunteer for this because, in esports, sometimes you have teams who have to compromise for like scholarship deals and this and that, right? Anyway, so it's like maybe you have a team who's very interested in research and wants to be the front runners and the trendsetters, and they want to like discover the new thing. So if you have a volunteer team who says, yeah, we're all on board, we're going to help you out with this, and then you basically need like a guy who can run the study for you, right? So you got to have like roughly someone working, probably I would say for a trial like this, you're looking at like several full days of work. So maybe call it like 40 hours of work that you pay some researcher, which isn't too bad, right? 1 week's worth of work there. Then you spend some extra money on like a manuscript writer who can like put it all together and do all that too. You spend some money on like a stats guy who can run all the numbers for you. You can do it pretty cheap, I would say. Like if you could almost do it for free if you have a bunch of volunteer workers. But if you have to pay for those things, like, you having worked in esports, right? Like if you wanted to book a day with a team for like an ad campaign, how much, you can imagine how much that would charge, right? Like that team, depending on the caliber of team, like that would be a lot of money. If you're like, oh, we're giving you 8 hours of like film content or something like that would be a pretty hefty price tag
especially for like a tier one team for sure.
Yeah,
like
yeah. So you can imagine you do that several days across for like you got your baseline, you got like your pre and your post at minimums, right? So it's like, you have at least 3 days worth of where you're paying an entire tier one team. Like that's actually gonna cost quite a bit of money. But if they're invested and they're willing to do it, then you can actually do it, I would say, for like probably a few $1,000s on like the very low end side.
that's
But
actually pretty lower than I would have thought.
if you have, this is like with enough volunteers and with the team that's like fully run and all that kind of stuff. If you, because at a minimum you're still going to need like a stats guy to like come in and like run all the numbers and make it appropriate. You're going to need like someone who can write the manuscript and try to get it published, and then the whole act of publication is like kind of tough. Just like you have to get like IRB approval on the front end and submit all these applications for that, and then on the back end you have to have the peer review process. And so there's still like those elements to it, so you're still looking at a few $1,000s. But if you're paying for everything from top to bottom, depending on how much the team charges, you're looking at like 5 figures more realistically to 6 figures for more comprehensive stuff, because then everyone gets mad too when it's like, oh, your sample size was only 5.
Yeah.
Right.
And even if I look at a study, sometimes I'm like, man, like it's not that I'm mad at them for doing it, because I understand funding and everything, but it's just like it's hard to extrapolate data from like 5 people.
Yeah.
And also I always feel like there's a little bit of like a replication issue in a lot of studies. Is like you see one study has these awesome results, but like no one's ever actually replicated it to see if it's actually like true.
That's the one thing that I talk about actually, and I love that you brought that up, because that truly is the proof, right? Like if you have any one-off study, literally means nothing. Like it 100% literally means nothing. The only time I am even going to become vaguely interested is if I see a second study that corroborates what the first study found, and it has to be from a separate lab. A lot of times, it's really funny actually, especially in esports and especially in the supplements marketed to esports, there are some compounds where it's like it's just one compound that's been researched, and you look at the researchers who've been looking at this, and it's the exact same lab, and people be like, oh yeah, that's replication. You're like, this is literally the exact same guy, just like publishing it again and again. Like show me someone in a different lab with different financial backing,
different country.
Show me that. And when you have that, then I'm like, ooh, I'm interested. If two different labs got the same results, that's powerful stuff. That's the single most powerful thing that you can look for.
No, for sure. I just remember like I don't know if you saw in the fitness world, like their Tricastostone thing was kind of hot there. It was supposed to like help you build extra muscle, be like better than creatine and stuff, and it just seemed like the studies were always like kind of iffy to me, but they started doing more of them.
What's it called? I'm actually not familiar with this, and I probably should be.
Turkesostone, or I might be spelling that, saying it a little bit wrong, but it's definitely like the kind of like the one where it's like, is this snake oil or not type thing. Because you'll
Uh-huh.
even have personal anecdotes of people being like, this really worked for me, but like, you know what a placebo is like. Like, it doesn't always necessarily mean that the product is good, right? Like, you could
Yeah.
probably give someone like a glass of water before a match and tell them it's a special reaction time drink, and for some of them it will literally make them faster just because they believe it. And I feel like confidence and like belief in yourself plays a very big role in a lot of industries like sports and esports specifically. But
Yeah, and I love the Mike Secret stuff, right? Space Jam.
yeah, exactly.
But you're so right. So placebo is like a really really fascinating one, and it transcends so much. Like because there's a lot of times in literature, what gets reported is averages. They don't report the individual. And I find that more and more researchers are doing this, but it's particularly problematic because the average may not be representative of anyone's experience. And what I mean by that is like if you have a room full of people where half of them are 10 years old and half of them are 50 years old, you're going to say the average age is 30, right? But that's not representative of anyone in the room at all.
Right.
But that's what gets reported in the literature is like, oh yeah, 30. And so what I'm, putting it into like physical terms or putting it into mental terms, a lot of times the average performance improvement for something like caffeine is maybe like a percentage or two. But is that typical of anyone's actual experience? And the answer is no. Some people have no results, some people have negative results, and some people actually have a bigger result. Same thing anyway. So you have this like spectrum of response patterns. So individual reporting is really, really important. But placebo effect is believed to be a big contributing factor for why some people are responders and some don't. Because when you actually tease out the people who respond and the people who don't, a lot of times the people who are responders are people who believe that supplements can actually help them or medications can help them or whatever. And the people who are null or negative responders tend to be people who believe that, very like anti-supplements and are like, oh yeah, supplements are garbage. They're going to make me better. Worse, they're poison. And so placebo is like huge, 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 huge. And it's really funny. They did this was not a well-controlled study at all, but this was a really fun study that they did like back in the 70s or something like that. And you'll probably laugh at this. They went to like a Gold's Gym or something way back when. I think it was like one of the famous ones in like Santa Monica or whatever. And they went around and they're like, hey, I got the stuff. Like, I got the stuff.
Yeah.
You want to take the stuff? And then they're like, oh yeah, sign me up, right? And so they start injecting some people, and then they go to some other people like, hey, we're doing a study. We got some saline. We're going to inject you. Here's some placebo.
So
Whatever.
this is probably not an ethical study.
It's not.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
this was the very uncontrolled. This was like
Yeah.
before real IRBs. This was not a really good study. I don't put a lot of stock in it, but it just kind of shows something. So what actually happened was the people who were told that they were getting the steroids, they had a third group, which was people who were on actual steroids. And so they saw that the people who were told they were getting steroids gain more muscle and gain more physical strength measured by like a hand grip strength than the people who were on actual steroids.
Okay.
So the people who
Yeah.
thought they were getting steroids gained more strength and more muscle than the people who were on real steroids, which was kind of nuts.
That's funny,
And
actually. Yeah.
yeah, and then we see this time and time again too. There's actually probably my favorite research study of all time ever. It was this study where what they did was they had a bunch of cyclists and they did a 10K time trial, 10-kilometer time trial. So finish 10 kilometers as fast as you can. And they had 3 doses. They had 0 mg per kg caffeine, 4.5 mg per kg caffeine, and 9 mg per kg caffeine. And for reference,
There's a lot of caffeine on the high.
Yeah, 9 is like I'm getting really jittery, my heart has
Yeah, yeah.
palpitations, all that kind of stuff. 4.5 is like right in the sweet spot for what they say for physical performance measures. And at the end of this, what they saw was a linear increase in improvement, which is typical for caffeine for endurance measures. They saw that the 4.5 group did about 1% better, and the 9 mg per kg group did about 3% better.
Okay.
But the funny thing was, all 3 groups were on placebo.
Okay.
And so what actually, and this is why it's my favorite study, is because literally actually the placebo group, the people who were told they're getting placebo, they actually did worse. They had like a -1%.
So they told you you're getting the highest dose
Yeah,
caffeine?
yeah, they
Okay,
told you you're getting
yeah.
the highest. They told you you're getting a 4.5, or they told you you're getting a
Right.
placebo. And so being told you're getting placebo actually made these people worse. Being told they're getting 4.5 made them better, and being told they were getting 9 made them do a lot better. And so this was the first time ever in literature that we saw, because we've known for a long time placebo effect's real, right? We've known for a
Yeah.
long time placebo effect exists. It's a very real phenomenon. But this was the first time in literature where we had a dose response placebo effect, which basically means that the strength of your belief dictated the actual performance outcome. So the people
Yeah.
who believed they got the higher dose did a lot better than the people who believed they got a smaller dose. And the people who were told they were placebo actually got like worse. And so that was nuts, which just means like literally the mind is like all powerful, I guess. I don't know. But
No, it's funny because I mean, what you're saying is even like yeah, I've seen other studies, maybe not similar exactly that with strength and stuff, where like, yeah, you just tell someone they're taking X and
yeah,
they just get stronger. But I would be one of those guys in the low placebo. They told me on the placebo, I'm like, I'm going to try 150%. Like, I'm going to ruin this study. Like, no, but like, what was I going to say? Sorry, it was when it comes to placebo, I always tell people, I'm like, if you think a product works, keep taking it.
oh yeah,
I don't, as long as it's not breaking the bank or it's bad for you or something. I'm like, if you think taking like magnesium before your game is helping you and you truly believe, do it. Like, I don't care as long as it's not hurting you. Like caffeine, no caffeine. Like as long as you're not getting jitters and it's like, you know, hurting your
yeah,
performance. I'm like, do it, man. Like it doesn't really matter if it works or not. Like, because I feel like a lot of these things are about like just confidence, which is like, I don't know how you do a study on this, but I mean, I've noticed, and I don't know how many, like, do you play a lot of different games? Do you specialize in, like, for fun or anything? Like, do you like shooters or MMOs or?
I well right now I'm like I miss a good MMO. Like I'm waiting to see what the Riot Games
I know,
MMO
it's a long wait. It's like World of
I
Warcraft or nothing. Like,
I know, like there's nothing out there right now, but I do miss a good MMO. I mean, I've played kind of all under the sun. So typically, what I'll try to do is whenever I'm working with a team, in like full force capacity, I try to play the game that I'm working with, just so I can understand when they're talking and like doing VOD reviews and things like that. That I have a fundamental conceptual understanding of the game and like what the key performance like outcomes are, what's relevant to them, what's not, that kind of stuff. But yeah, so I played it all. I'm not very good at like a lot of games. Like I'll say very candidly, like I have old man hands. Like they're slow. I'm notoriously awful at FPS games, which I know you're amazing at. But like the only FPS that I've ever had any margin of success in are the ones where I can have a character that's non-mechanical in nature, like a Winston in Overwatch or something.
yeah, Lucio or something.
Yeah. So like that's my only way that I can like keep up in those games, because my aim ability is god awful.
Some people got it, some people don't. But obviously, practice, time obviously is a big factor. You can probably improve it. The reason I brought it up was just because if you played FPS games, matchmaking or anything like that, one thing I've noticed is like people get frustrated at dumb players, but oftentimes like dumb players can like exceed their expectations because they don't really get disheartened. Like they're just kind of like, it's almost like there's a certain level of delusion that's like beneficial.
Yeah.
And obviously it depends, right? Like different like games are going to be more punishing. Like if you play a Dota, League of Legends, you can't be that dumb because you're just going to get punished. And they're like, you can't be. I'm not saying you can't be better than people in that game, but in Counter-Strike, I could do something really stupid. Like I could run through 2 smokes, flash myself with a deagle, and then like 1 deke someone, like just with a crazy shot. Like I can do something really stupid and still come out on top. And like it's just something I've noticed where it's like I feel like a lot of these esports teams would benefit from just like hammering confidence to a lot of these players. Like you have so many of these guys that go to events that are very good. Some people may have even been better than simple or something at some point, but they either get nerves or they lose confidence or they second guess themselves a lot. And I think like that's definitely something that should probably be focused on. and like I know caffeine can help or hurt that because caffeine can give you anxiety, which was going to make you perform worse, even if the caffeine's kind of like helping you, like reaction time wise or something. It could be hurting you because you're now anxious about making a play or you're scared of losing a round or something. That's not really something you want at a high level. So, do you have any info? Like, do you have any supplements that like I was just gonna basically get into like, do you have any supplements that you think actually like kind of help confidence? Because I feel like that's not really talked about a lot. I mean, that would be maybe something that makes you feel good or like more like uplifted. That might just be general health. And what are your favorites for like cognitive function, like reaction time and just like alertness? Because I feel like there's a couple nootropics and stuff coming out. For example, my coach, he has a supplement company, and he's coming out with a product that apparently doesn't exist. He found some chemical that he thinks is going to be banned, but he's putting it in there, and he's like, it makes you really alert. So I'm like, all right, send me some when it's ready.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay. So you said a lot there. So just to kind of rewind for a quick second, go back to some of the other things, and then I have a small question that I want to pose to you before I answer the rest of it. So the first one is just I agree 100% about your thoughts about placebo. I tell people all the time, like, I am a true believer in placebo effect. And if you got it, I am never, ever going to be like, oh yeah, this supplement, when you tell me it feels like it's helping you, I'm never going to tell you to stop taking it unless it's something that I know is like, unhealthy or risky or could actually be performance decreasing. By and large, like if something is working, I trust your experience. And even if it is placebo effect, like, I would much rather take placebo than if I had a bottle of placebo pills and it like enhanced my reaction time and right. Like, and I took that, like, I'd rather take that than any possible compound that you could put in there. Right. Just because. So like by and large, like placebo effect is supremely amazing. And anytime you can leverage it, you should. And so as coaches and as coaches in general, and as for me, like working on nutrition, given the fact that placebo effect is real, I almost always try to hype up things within moral, ethical, like reason. Like, I'm not going to lie to you, but I do try to sometimes oversell things, because when you oversell it, it increases the likelihood that it will actually work because of belief effect and placebo effect. So I generally am of the mindset that, like, for whatever discipline, if you're like, oh yeah, you need to start exercising, you need to like really tell them like, oh yeah, for sure, you're going to feel like you have a lot more energy when you're done doing this. Like, this is going to be amazing for you. Trust me. You need to be mobile. Okay. Like, do you want to be, you don't want to be just a flash in the pan. You want to have like, longevity in the sport. Like you got to like really try to sell things to them. And then that gives them a much higher chance of it actually working. So I definitely love placebo effect for that. The second thing I wanted to actually ask you was, in relation to, you mentioned this confidence measure. I've seen it both ways, but I'm curious like what your perspective is, just because you've worked with a different set of people than I have. But I love confidence, and I think confidence helps out a lot of people. You have to have some measure of belief in yourself. If you have no belief in yourself, you're not going to try and work towards anything, right?
Yeah.
But I have seen sometimes that players let their confidence turn into big egos, and big egos then kind of stopping them from growing. And I guess my question for you is like, are you seeing it's more like, have you seen it such that the bigger problem is that people who are confident and then lose their confidence, and so maybe they get like tilted or something like that? Or is it have you seen also this other issue maybe where it's like, okay, well, your confidence got so big because you've been like pub stomping all day, and then like when you finally went toe to toe with someone who's actually good, now you realize that you're not like hot shit, and so now your ego's like stopped you from even trying to grow, because you're like, oh, I pub stomp, so therefore I'm good and I don't need to get better. You know what I mean? Like maybe it stopped them from trying to grow. I don't know if I'm phrasing my question right.
I think I understand. I played with one player. I mean, I'm just gonna say his name's Sick. He was on Valorant. I played with him when he was like 16. Right. I picked up Twist when he was 15, Sick when he was 16. So they're very like rough. So if they hear this, they're kind of going to be like, yeah, I was young, and like they've improved a lot since then. Like, we weren't perfect. I wasn't perfect. They weren't perfect, but they were still like learning to become professionals at that point. And Sick is kind of that example you're using of someone that's like so confident in himself that he hurts his own progress at the time, where it's like he was mechanically way better. So like he could play a pug and just kind of run through smokes and just kill everyone. Like he didn't have to, like, he was very, very fast and very like, and he liked to play quick and fast and push, and right. So then we play games, and obviously he's not playing like that in our official matches or practice, but he would take duel, like he would get a kill, and like, when you can get a kill and you fall back safely, now you're in a 5v4. He's always
Yeah.
going for 2 every single time, right? Like, and then he gets 2, then he's going for 3. And like Valens, who he coached for Evil Geniuses,
Yeah.
C9, they got a major with him as a coach. He was my coach at the time, and he would just be like, Hunter, you can't just peek like when you get 2, just fall back, and he's like, I should have got him. And he
Yeah.
truly believes that. Like,
Yeah.
he truly believes like he didn't do anything wrong. He just got unlucky. Like, he
Mm,
should have killed him. It was just a little bit unlucky. And like
yeah.
so I do agree with you that like there becomes a point of confidence where it can like hurt you for sure. But I think it does depend on the player's personality. You have some people that are very like, they're still very like methodical, very like team oriented, but very confident in themselves.
Mm, mhm.
Like they know that they're going to perform, but they're still doing everything else like they're just another player on the team.
Yeah.
So they're still doing all the right things. Whereas with some players they get so confident and they start like kind of going outside of what is expected of them from their teammates, and I think that's kind of when the confidence is hurting you. And what was the first part that you said again?
So yeah, I mean, I think you kind of answered it, but
Okay.
I was kind of looking to see, maybe broad strokes, like what's the biggest issue that you're seeing on this like confidence spectrum? Because
Right.
I've
Right.
seen it both ways, especially like some teams I'm not going to name any names, but like some teams they like bring in like these hotshot players who are renowned as like you know the legend themselves, right? And it's like, oh yeah, we paid 2 million for this guy's contract or something, right? Like something crazy. And then they come in and like they have this reputation, and then they feel like they have to defend the reputation. They feel like they are great, and so then they just feel like they don't need to improve. And sometimes I just feel like I've seen a good chunk of times where this confidence stifles the growth mindset, and it's because you become overconfident, right? Like I think
Yeah.
you need a certain level of confidence, but I feel like maybe it's like a bell curve distribution or something where there's like a sweet spot, and then you go too far to the right or too far to the left, either or, and it's like you start having problems. Like you can get tilted one way, or maybe it's like you get overconfident and then you stop wanting to grow, and that like sweet spot is maybe be different based off your baseline personality or something. I don't know.
I've seen that kind of what you're talking about a lot. I've seen it in teammates too, where it's like you have a guy that's just not confident, but he's still good. Like
Yeah,
he's not super confident, but like it doesn't seem to affect his ability to perform.
yeah,
But his comms kind of sound nervous. He doesn't ever seem like super confident that you're just going to win a game easily, but he still plays well. Um,
yeah,
but then you definitely have the guy that like, oh, these guys are better than us, man. They're like, this is a legend, and like I hated playing with those people because I'm like, dude, I want to like smack them, like get that out of you. Like you can't be thinking that before you go into a game. And the people that are very down before the game even starts, I definitely think like that's like a terrible. I've never had good outcomes consistently with those players.
yeah.
Because it's almost like they're losing the game before they even play it, just because they're like going in with expectations like this is going to be super hard. Whereas
Yeah,
like you should be going in like we at least 50-50, like obviously at a high level anyone can kind of beat anyone to a certain
right.
point.
Yeah,
But I've seen the overconfidence thing happen quite a bit, I think, over the years just with teams, right? So like in Fnatic when they became the best team in the world, 2000 like kind of I don't even know what it was 2014 ish. They were like the best team. They were players that had never been pro before, so like this was their first like 2 years of being like pro, new game, and they'd win a tournament, go home and practice the day they get back. Go to the
mm,
next tournament, win, go home, practice the day they get back. So they the best team for about a year. Then
yeah,
they slowly fall off. I don't know if it's because they start playing less, but I noticed that teams that have been like pretty high on the totem pole, and then they win a tournament. If they're not new to the pro scene, a lot of times they don't want to go home and then like grind the first day they're back, which like they want to take a day off. Like I just think there's like something about like bursting onto the scene,
yeah,
becoming a new fresh pro, and being at the top. Like they're so motivated to just play like and grind, and then you kind of lose that a little bit. And I think some of those people just get cocky. Like
yeah,
like realistically, I think in the back of their head they know like these young guys are gunning for us. Like we
right.
should be playing. But then again, you have to kind of balance burnout. Like when Astralis was the best team in the world,
Mm,
I know they took breaks. I know they didn't overplay. Their practice schedule wasn't like insane year round. They would ramp up, like, before a major they'd play more.
Yep.
In a down period they might, have an extra day off here or there. And I do think managing the burnout is important, but I just think, like, kind of to what you're saying about confidence is, like, you get some of these guys, they've just become a pro, they're so motivated, all they want to do is play. That happened to me. I play with nothing, Jordan, and all I want to do is scrim all day. And then Jordan would be like, I want to go to a concert. I'm like, how could this guy want to go to a concert when we could play Counter-Strike? You know what I mean? Like, I just, like, my brain did not understand it. But he had already been a pro for, 6 years, or I'm just making up a number. But before that, so I think there's definitely something to be said about, like, kind of like they're so confident and be like, yeah, like, I know what to do. Like, I'm good. I'm already good, and, like, not wanting to maybe put in the extra effort. Because if you look at real sports, you look at, like, Michael Jordan and, like, Kobe Bryant and, like, some of these chess players and stuff, like, they're not taking time off. Like, a lot of these guys, like, they're ruthless in, like, their training regiment, their practice. They're always, like, trying to improve. And I don't think that happens all the time in video games.
Yeah. And the thing I'll say about that from what I've seen in traditional sports, though, is the people who that strategy works for are the people who really enjoy, like, truly enjoy with a passion what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of times in esports, from what I've seen, a decent chunk of people start out and they get good at the game because they fundamentally enjoy the game, and they're just, like, crushing the ladder and they're like, I want to get better because I love this game. It's, like, super fun. And then the longer I work with, like, some teams where you have a game that's been going on for a long time, like something like League of Legends or something like that, right? Where the game's been around for a very long time. And you have these players who are like, I need to play other games to relax, or I need to go do something else to relax. And then, like, they kind of have lost that passion for the game. And I feel like that's the beginning of the end for someone when they're not actually passionate about that. I understand burnout and I understand all this kind of stuff, but I think putting it in perspective sometimes, because sometimes you have players who are just like, some players maybe who are just there for, like, a paycheck, right? And they're like, I'm going to show up and do this. And then there are some people who are like, I love doing what I'm doing. And then there are some people who,
like, they'd be doing it for no money.
Yeah.
Like, to an extent, I know, but
yeah. And so it's really interesting just because a lot of people have different motivations walking in for doing what they're doing. And sometimes they get kind of like, esports is so fascinating to me because I think this does tie into the confidence thing too, and the personality thing too. It's so different from traditional sports, where in traditional sports, you might have, like, if you're looking at, say, like, the Olympic level gymnasts or something, right? Like, they will have been groomed in a team setting, working beneath a coach, working on their gymnastic skills since they were, like, 4 years old. You know what I mean? Like, the kids who are, like, the pros in, like, baseball, basketball, football, they've been playing it since they were a kid. They've been part of a team. They've had the that team dynamic in place. They've had people count on them, rely on them. They've had heart-crushing defeats. They've had very uplifting victories. They've had coaches, beat them up and, like, come in at, like, 5 a.m. to practice because they're mad at them for something. Like, they've done all these things, and there's, like, a certain maturity about a lot of these pro athletes in traditional sports that I feel like the ecosystem is not really well set up in esports yet in the same way to mimic that, because
I agree.
Yeah, like, esports is new. Or yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to butt in and say, like,
yeah.
I kind of like because you've worked with more teams probably overall than I. Like, I've been on teams, but you've probably worked with more teams, like, overall different games and stuff. And I just wanted your opinion. Like, I kind of agree with what you're saying in the sense that, like, in real sports you have, like, a hierarchy of, and I feel like in esports, and, like, I could be wrong with other games in my own perspective, but it feels like in real sports the coach is, like, on a pedestal a lot of the time, and, like, he could tell you to do the dumbest thing in the world and you have to do it. Like, but in Counter-Strike, from my experience and talking to other coaches, like, you get a lot of resistance from the players. Like, the players think they're closer to your level and than they do in, like, traditional sports. And I think, like, maybe over time when maybe a coach is 50 years old and he's coaching 20-year-olds, it'll be a little different. He'll have more of that, like, father figure, like, more authority type thing. But I definitely see, like, the hierarchy in esports is way different than in real sports. And I think maybe that impacts some of the teams, because I feel like a team like Navi, they have a coach like Blade, and I feel like what he says goes. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like he has control. He could cut you. Like, he can, and you kind of know, like, even if you don't agree, like, you kind of just got to do it. And in a way, that can be frustrating for players because they're like, no, this is better. I want to do this. But at the same time, having kind of like uniform vision and making sure everyone knows what they're doing and doing a certain ways probably better for like longevity. But it's hard to say because I feel like esports hasn't been like perfected and coaching isn't the same quite.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's really weird. So I mean, you look at like the best coaches in history, right? You look at like a John Wooden or something like that, right, for basketball, and there's no way you could have him do one-on-one against like Kobe or Michael Jordan or something like that, right? Like, it's just like silly to think that
yeah.
John Wooden could like, even
No.
dribble a basketball appropriately. You know what I mean? But he was a phenomenal coach, like one of the most winningest coaches in all time. And so it's funny because in esports, it's like the player, if they think they're better than you, they almost just don't respect you or want to listen to you as a coach. You know what I mean? And like, you see that all the time. Like, I think I know better. And like, well, what's your rank? Like, I'm better ranked than you. You're, oh my God, you're only diamond. Come on, whatever.
Yeah.
Like they'll say shit like that. And it's kind of frustrating because the skills that make you a good coach don't necessarily make you, doesn't mean you're a good player, and vice versa. Like, sometimes they go hand in hand, but more often than not, those two are very different. And I think in esports, we have this funnel where the players want like former pros to be coaches almost. And that's fine. Like, I think it does lend a certain amount of knowledge and understanding to that. And like, having been like a former pro player, all those kind of things, like it helps you understand what the challenges are and what, the drives are, what works, what doesn't. But at the same time, coaching is like an entirely different skill set inherently. And, just because you were a former pro doesn't mean you're going to be a good coach at all. And I think the team dynamics are grossly different. I think the ecosystem, and like, you have these kids who are pulled straight out of like high school, and it's like, oh, I just was good at the ladder, and then, they scouted me, boom, and I'm in, right? I took it, and now here I am, right? I decided to skip college because of this. And you're like, wow, this is a weird transition in your life all of a sudden, right? And so they don't have that. I don't think they have that confidence base or that mental resiliency either, where it's like, how do you deal with crushing losses at like such a scale where you're like actually training day in and day out? Like, how do you recover from that? And that's really tough, right? And these players haven't been through that. I think more structured failure is needed for a lot of younger players. Like, if you can build in failure into a player's training curriculum somehow, so that way they become more mentally resilient, I think that's a huge one.
It's even hard to get people not to care about losing scrims, like practice games. Like, it's very difficult because I used to get really frustrated. Obviously this squad right now announced is much better than like the earlier iterations, but I started with some like a pretty rough project at one point where these people had never played on even under an org really. And now they're playing kind of like at a higher tier 2-ish level. And yeah, it's just like you're saying is like, you gotta get used to losing sometimes, and you gotta be able to like reflect and learn from the losses. And like, in practice, the whole point of practice is to
get better. You don't care about winning. You shouldn't care about winning at scrims at all.
But people do, man. Even if they say they don't, like, they'll lose a dumb round to someone they don't like or something, and they get frustrated. And I'm like, nobody cares if you win a scrim. You could win every scrim in the world. Nobody cares. Like,
literally
so
zero.
I definitely agree with that. It's funny how, it's just funny how it all works, because I think some of these guys, I think part of it is they've never really played a sport. I think a lot of coaches will say that if they have a player on the team that has played a sport or even worked a job, even worked like a year at even something like McDonald's or something, like, it just helps them, for one, understand that like, hey, I got it pretty good in esports, I should be putting in effort. Because I played with one guy, and he used to work a job like that, and then he was esports. He works pretty hard, right? Because he's like, I don't want to go back there. Like, I want to make this my career. So yeah, I definitely think like that plays a pretty big factor.
That used to be. So I oversee a lot of like teams of interns for different jobs that I've done, and I still oversee some interns. That's actually one of my like entry level criteria, just for me to like work with me, is I never want to be someone's first boss. Like, I need them to have had a job before, because that sets in stone these like basic fundamental like mature grown-up skills, right? Like, how to wake up and show up on time to a thing. I don't care what the thing was. Like, it could literally be McDonald's, like you said. But as long as you've done a job for a little bit, I feel like that just gives you so much appreciation for life, and
And
like
you've
an
learned how to be
understanding.
accountable. You
Yeah,
know, which is a lot of people don't know how to be accountable. Like I personally as a coach, if I don't know if I'm too lax, but like if you're 5 minutes late once a month, I don't care. Like personally, I'm not gonna ream you out for you being late one time in a month or two. Like I that's now consistently being late. Of course, I'm gonna talk to you at some point and be like,
yeah,
hey man, like you got like people are waiting around for you every day, and like they're getting frustrated, right? Like,
yeah,
because I'm not one of those people like even in game like it's kind of like you miss one smoke on Mirage. I'm not gonna bitch at you if you miss one smoke in 50 scrims. Like to
yeah,
me, like that's life. Like things
yeah,
don't always go your way. But some people are very bad at that. They will critique very early. Like, oh, you missed it. It's like, sorry. Like what do you want me to say, dude? Like I'm not. Yeah, I did, right? But like, um,
yeah,
um, but like it's like almost kind of pointless. Like they know they missed it. Like they don't normally do that. You know, like it's like if someone has an off day and they run through a smoke and they die, and I'm a coach.
yeah,
I'm like, why did you run through the smoke? And they're just like, yeah, I don't know why I did that. My bad. I'm like, all right,
yeah,
you know, like it's a one-off. You screwed up, and like you
yeah,
don't normally do that. Now, if you're always running through smokes, I'm gonna be like, bro, you have to stop, like
yeah,
lose, like throwing your life away like that.
yeah.
Like you have to. So I think, yeah, there's definitely
I've
some
seen.
give or take.
I was gonna say I've seen some teams where they actually there was one team that did this that I thought was very smart. Was whenever they had an instance like that, they built it in as kind of like a training. So in game specifically, where it's like, so like I saw this in League of Legends, was like, okay, well, one of the players was mad that like top lane lost or something like that. And it's like, okay, from now on we're gonna have a losing top lane, and let's see how the rest of the team adapts and like deals with this as like a feature, right?
Yeah,
Like, and then like that's fine. Like if top lane wins, great, and then like kind of play that game a little bit where it's like, well, let's
yeah, because
incorporate
you're
different.
gonna have a real match where top lane loses, right?
Yeah,
Like, and
it's gonna
then
happen sometime.
you're gonna have to be able to win still. Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
exactly.
I like that stuff. Like in Counter Strike, I used to sometimes have my teams run like low buy rounds and just be like, "Yo, we're pretty bad at low buy rounds.
Yeah,
We're gonna buy every round this scrim and not care if we win or lose. We're just gonna practice pretending we have no money the whole game to get
yeah,
used to like the different scenarios because like the game is quite a bit different when you have full inventory versus like partial inventory, right?
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
I really like those type of things, and I don't know if they're utilized enough. Part of me always wonders that at least in Counter Strike or I know it's harder in Dota is like
yeah,
if more teams should be kind of like practicing things versus other teams on purpose. You know, like
yeah,
maybe you message their coach and be like, "Hey, we're going to be doing X, Y, or Z. Do you guys want to do X, Y, or Z?" And then be like, "Yeah, let's practice that." But like the coaches talk to each other, but the players don't really know, like per
mm,
se. Like maybe you tell them a little bit, but you don't want to like you don't want to. The problem I have with doing stuff like that is like a lot of people stop trying. Like
yeah,
not in the sense that they're not like taking it serious. It's just like they take liberties. You know, like
yeah,
they're like, oh, I'm buying every round. Well, then I'll push this, or like they'll make bigger dick plays than they normally would, just
yeah,
because they know like it's not really truly what like a real scrim, I guess.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like in esports, you're always dealing with these weird mindsets, and I don't know, like I feel like part of it comes to like a lot of, I'm an introvert too, so I'm not trying to like talk down anyone, but like you got a lot of introverts. They like a lot of people that maybe weren't like socially super popular in high school, stuff like
yeah.
that, right? And then they come to esports and like those baggage is still there,
Hmm.
a little bit, and they're not always the best at working with people. Luckily, I've always been good at talking with people and like getting along with people, but I've always had like I don't always love going to events and being around people and like
Oh, I hate it. I hate it. I do it, but I hate it.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So like I don't mind it sometimes, but I have like a battery life, you know, where like I want to do something for like an hour or two, and then I just want to like
yeah,
go and like not talk to anyone for a while, and then I can come back. I don't know. It's always kind of how I've been.
yeah. I 100% agree. Yeah. So I know just to rewind way back, 20 minutes ago when you asked this first question, on the nutrition side or on the supplement side, is there anything that can impact maybe some of these layers of things? The funny thing is the most impactful things that someone can do that are nutrition or supplement related are really unsexy. And the super sucky thing I
Yeah,
have when dealing with esports players is a lot of them are like looking to min max this like tiny thing that even if done like to a T maybe gives them like a 0.01% improvement or something. Like it's a very minuscule thing. When they haven't drunk water and they haven't seen a piece of broccoli in like a year or something like that. They haven't even walked by a piece of broccoli in a year. You know what I mean? Like, and then they're like asking me like, oh yeah, what about like these like crazy timing or supplement strategies that I can implement? Like I heard, this podcast or influencer was talking about XYZ things. Like, should I be following this protocol or, the Bryant Johnson diet or blah, 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 like all this kind of, I'm like
carnivore. That's what I
I'm like, bro, you're eating McDonald's 3 meals a day. Like, what are you talking about? Like, why are we even having this conversation right now? And so that's more often than not where it has to start. But a lot of players don't like to start there because they feel like they want to bypass that and just like min max. And I think that's just kind of where people are, because that's kind of where they are with their esports, and they feel like they can apply it to other, arenas of their life. So the funny thing is, some of this like personality and confidence things are just who you are. Like it's your natural disposition, and there are, for example, some people who are naturally introverted, some people who are naturally extroverted, right? There's some flexibility across the life, right? I forced myself to become a teacher because I am so naturally introverted. So like when they asked me to be a teacher, I was like, this scares me beyond all like reasonable amounts. Like I even to this day when I teach, like I still get like sweaty palms, I get like butterflies in my stomach, like I feel bad doing it. But then I get into it and I do it, and like I just keep forcing myself to do these things because I know that it's a skill that's valuable, and like I believe in it. But all that to be said is like there are some natural predispositions that people have, and some people have certain personality traits. Some people fall on different areas of slide scales of these different metrics that we can look at, things like confidence or introversion, extroversion, all this kind of stuff. And so the diet piece, it's hard to say that a diet will uniquely impact, say, like is there a diet food that's going to make you more extroverted or introverted, like uniquely? It's hard for me to say. Actually, I can give an answer for that. Probably like alcohol. But But that being said, like I don't think there really are like certain things that can do some of those personality trait adjustments, because a lot of those are just kind of hard coded into you as a person. And I think now there are, like, to the confidence measure, there is something that we have called this like performance arousal curve, and it's basically a normal bell curve. Normal distribution pattern. And so what it shows is that as you become, I'm using this in the scientific sense here, as you become more aroused, your performance will slowly increase, and then it will slowly decrease if you become too aroused. And so what this kind of comes into is like, okay, I'm approaching in the zone, and then like my heart starts palpitating, I'm getting jittery, like I'm getting super anxious. Like that's kind of where this like thing kind of comes from. Or like on the far this side, you're like super chill and relaxed, and like you can't be bothered, like you just don't even want to get out of bed kind of thing, like you're like way over here. And so we have this performance arousal curve, and some people are very much so like type A, naturally anxious kind of people. They're like way over here, and they're just like high strung. And for them, they need compounds or substances that maybe bring them back down into this area. So they need like things that mellow them out. And that will be performance enhancing for them.
So that would be something, for example, like ashwagandha root, like L-theanine, like those type of things that are going to kind of like relax you. And just so people are aware, like these things don't relax you to put you to sleep. They just kind of like, do they actually relax the central nervous system, or is it just kind of like a calming feel? Do you know?
I'm actually not familiar with the mechanism for ashwagandha. I know it's very, very potent, and it's probably the most potent thing we have before you have to get bumped up to like real pharmaceuticals. L-theanine does operate through the brain. Well, both operate through the brain, I guess. But yeah, I think my understanding is L-theanine operates through like neurotransmitters and like some of the stuff in the brain, and whereas ashwagandha, I have no idea. I don't know. I haven't looked at the mechanism for that in like, I don't know, years. But I do know it works, and I've recommended it before, so I probably should look that up. But I don't have a good answer for you right now.
It's hard to know everything.
I don't want to lie and like make up a mechanism that's not there. But ashwagandha is very potent. It does work, and you're absolutely right that both of those would work as mellowing agents to like bring you here if you're already very high strung. And then on the other side, we have stimulants that can bring someone who's like naturally more chill up to the sweet spot. So caffeine is like the classic example for that, right? But overlaid on top of this whole thing is another thing that we have to consider, which is what is your body naturally doing right now? And by that, I mean um, sitting in a research lab or sitting in your underwear at home is very different than being in a stadium filled with tens of thousands of people with screaming fans and with like your coach and the world championship on the line, and you know your friends and family are there watching you, kind of thing, right? Like, and so in one situation you have all these like natural stimulating cortisol, adrenaline stuff running through you, and in another situation you're kind of more relaxed and already kind of chill, right? And so depending on if it's like a high value scrim or a low value scrim, or if it's, you know, like, 'cause sometimes it's like, oh yeah, we're really testing something out, or maybe we're playing a big team, or, you know, maybe there's like a scout watching or something. Like there could be a million reasons why, you know, there it's a high or low value scrim. And then like the tournaments, right? Okay, first game of the season, who gives a shit, right? World championships. This is it. This is for all the marbles, right? You know, so like you have like high value games, low value games, high value scrims, low value scrims, and then you just have like your own home time. And so on top of that arousal curve is like, are you naturally already being aroused because you have all this natural adrenaline? You're already over here. Whereas maybe on scrim day, you need caffeine, but on world championship day, you don't need caffeine.
So on world champion day, we should probably be taking like Viagra, right? No,
maybe.
Just kidding. Get the arousal maximum.
That's a thought right there. So yeah, it's really interesting just because for everyone it's going to be a unique situation, and at the end of the day, it's like you're going to have to test and figure out what works for you. I would say on average, most scrims tend to have the same like baseline arousals. Most home games, so like if you have like a decentralized team, you know, like everyone's like living at home and they're just like kind of syncing up online, that has its own arousal level. And then like a game, like a real game worth points or standings or whatever, those are worth things too. So that has its own natural arousal level. So for each of those situations, you should figure out kind of where you are, and you can rank yourself. You can say like 0 to 10, you know, where do I feel, how anxious, how whatever am I? And then the goal is to get to first figure out where your sweet spot is. Maybe for you it's a 5, maybe for you it's a 7. I don't know. You figure it out. And then you can see how you feel in response to different like stimulating agents or like mellowing out agents. So it is kind of a lengthy process, and usually does take like at least one full season to really tease that out. But that's the only thing that I've seen that can really directly impact, like, say, the somewhat close to a confidence level is like the arousal level. Generally, people who are taking like a lot of stimulants, they confuse the two. Like they'll confuse confidence for, you know, just being generally aroused, or like, because that's the feeling that they get when they have their adrenaline flowing.
Kinda
It's
like
they feel
hyped up feeling.
Yeah. So a lot of times those two kind of overlap a lot. In NASCAR, for example, historically it was a sport where high percentage of individuals were doing cocaine, and cocaine naturally makes you feel very, very confident. A lot of adrenaline flowing, very stimulating. And so those individuals, like, they feel very good when they're doing it, and so that confidence kind of plays into that with some of these stimulants. But to set the stage for all this, though, you know, so I mentioned like the fundamentals, like the basics and all that kind of stuff. Truly, the basics, the unsexy stuff, like, are you drinking enough water in a day? Are you eating vegetables? Are you eating enough protein? Are you eating at like calorie amounts consistently that makes sense for you? Are you exercising? Are you sleeping appropriately? Like all these like fundamental things that are like super unsexy, but like if you genuinely actually did them, your ROI is going to be like through the roof. Like it will truly be through the roof. Like it will be worth more than anything, and you will be like 80-90% the way there. And then once you've done those things, then we can layer on top some like higher level strategies, of which, the arousal curve is kind of one of them. And there's a lot of different things, but yeah, there are certain foods that are good for this, right? Like, okay, so I mentioned water. Are you eating enough vegetables? Berries seem to be particularly helpful. Protein seems to be helpful. Are you eating a lot of healthy fats? I think in gamers, this is probably the most missed one that most gamers don't do right. So healthy fats, I mean, things like, seafood, eggs, olive oil, nuts and seeds, avocado, like all that kind of stuff. Are you eating those regularly, or are you eating, candy and getting a Starbucks every day? And
yeah, for anyone watching, almost all the fat you're getting from like DoorDash is pretty bad for you. Like it's
yeah.
They're doing seed oils, they're doing trans fats, they're not using higher quality fats like coconut oil, avocado oil. Like you might get some guacamole, which is totally fine.
Yeah.
I think people don't understand that guac is basically just avocado. Like it's
Yeah,
with
that's
some
basically what it is.
yeah. So like if you want to add some healthy fats to your diet, just get the avocado cups, the guac cups, and you just use them as avocado because you don't have to wait 4 days for them to ripen and then they go bad in 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But I definitely agree with you in terms of like none of these things like impact you super quickly, right? Like
No,
I think
no.
that's the issue with a lot of these guys is like I agree with you
100%.
that people are not doing the right things. Like
Yeah.
like they're not treating it like a sport because it's not something where you're physically active. I think if you get a runner or you get a basketball player, it's easier to convince them like, hey man, you got to eat properly because their
Yep.
body's performing. Whereas like in video games, I don't feel like people really care or like really think about it. Like they might be okay being skinny fat or being skinny or being a little chubby because they're just like, I don't care. I just want to play video games. But I'm like, I rather you eat healthy foods and be chubby and do a little bit of cardio and not actually lose any weight than eat McDonald's and do nothing. You
Yeah.
know, like because well, healthy at any size is not something I agree with. I do think food choices still can impact how you feel and how you perform, even at higher weights or not caring about being like shredded. For
Yeah.
example.
100%. Yeah, I got some like so literally within 2 weeks of eating just enough fruits and vegetables. That's the sorry, fruits, vegetables, and enough fatty fish. If you do that for 2 weeks, your energy level will be significantly higher. You'll also reduce your risk of injury and like getting sick and stuff by over 60%, which is nuts. So that's the number one metric of success for most athletes is just, can you show up every day and do what you need to do? And so time off is like, you're falling behind. So if you're just doing that, like that alone is going to significantly make you feel better. And you're right, though, it's not immediate. And I think that's the biggest issue because even, even in esports, like there's a strong connection. Like if you work with a physical therapist and you're like, oh, I need help with my wrist, and they're having me do this like wrist exercises, that makes sense because you're like, oh, I use my wrist all the time, right?
Yeah.
But if I tell you to eat a broccoli, does that help you tomorrow? And you're probably like, I don't feel the physical like help from the broccoli that I just
And they might
ate.
even do it for a week, right?
Yeah.
But they go and then it's convenience, right? It's easier to pull
Yeah.
out the app, like
Exactly.
which
Exactly.
is kind of like on an off point. I feel like if you make enough money, which a lot of these guys do, I don't understand why more people just don't buy meal prep. Like you're
Yeah.
busy, you don't
Come on.
care, just get your salmon, baked potato, asparagus, and throw it in the microwave for
Yep.
2 minutes, and it'll be cheaper than DoorDash every day.
100%.
Like it will literally be cheaper.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. Like
Higher quality.
when you're tier two, I get it. You don't have as much money. Meal prep is
Yeah.
expensive. But
Yeah.
dude, some of these guys are making 20, 40, 60 grand a month. And I'm
Yeah.
like, spend a couple $100 on some
On
meal
some
prep.
food. Yeah.
Make your life easier.
Seriously.
Every sorry, just a little tangent is
Yeah.
just like every high level sport athlete will spend a lot of money on their body, right? And I feel like esports players are very cheap when it comes to their own health. Like they don't want to even buy a pack of magnesium. It doesn't matter how much money they make. They'll be like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's expensive." And I'm thinking like, "Bro, like who cares?"
Yeah.
It's like $100. Like it's gonna make you
Yeah.
better. It can help you. Like I just don't understand some of that logic, and I just think like basically like offloading as much of your responsibility as a pro as you can is super beneficial. Like hire a
Yeah.
maid, get meal
Yeah.
prep, like literally make your life completely like first world. Like people are gonna make fun of you on Reddit basically for
Yeah.
like how you live. Like I don't care, and then just focus on your game. And I think that would
That's all you
benefit
gotta do.
people a lot.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. LeBron spends over 1 million per year just on stuff for his body, which is
Yeah.
a little bit of an extreme example, but I mean, like, just to show, like, like between like massages and like like physical therapy and strength coach and nutrition and all this kind of stuff, like, so it's over $1 million a year just like looking after his body. Not everyone has that amount of dollars, but for the people who can afford it, like a lot of these things are very affordable and they'll get you most of the way there. Like meal prep is a perfect example where it's cheaper than DoorDash. So just, might as well. And it's faster than DoorDash too, which is like hilarious.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's faster and it's cheaper. And there are some really good ones that taste pretty good out there. but even still, so like if you do your baseline nutrition right, like you're eating enough like veg, you're eating some seafood every now and again, and you're drinking enough fluids. So fluids is interesting because with hydration you will see an improvement within 24 to 48 hours. That's about how much time it takes to adjust your hydration status. With food, there are some foods, some specific foods that can acutely in the few hours afterwards make you better cognitively, but most of the food will operate over a timeline from weeks to months and years. And so you have to give it some time to actually work. You need to make it a consistent pattern. I'm not going to say you have to bring a food scale with you to the restaurant and go all crazy and all this kind of stuff, but you should be broad strokes eating like healthy-ish food and limiting like the trash junk food. And if you have to ask if it's junk food or not, it's probably junk food. Let's be real.
Yeah.
Like most people in their heart of hearts know what healthy food is and what healthy
No,
food
it's a
isn't.
Snickers, man. It's fine.
I know. Yeah, most people think that they can do like let's have the Snickers and pizza and a handle of vodka, and then let's just take a multivitamin and call it a day. And it's like that's not how the body works. The brain has very unique needs in the same way that your muscles do. And so some fun things, like literally you'll cut your risk of getting sick in half, over half, which is cool. So a lot of the esports players that I work with, they try to establish brands and like go stream on the side, and try to have that be their career eventually. They did a fun study where what they did was they asked people to rate the physical attractiveness of a bunch of photographs of people, and the people who, by the way, this is face only, okay, face only, body not shown, okay, so we don't know if they got like shredded six pack or whatever, just face only. Consistently, when we rank their diets, like what their diets were, the people who had the better diets were rated more physically attractive. And what you can do is you can actually, what happens is like you improve like the skin tone, like you get more flush and rosy cheeks and all this kind of stuff. So like literally a couple of weeks you'll be more physically attractive. You're more physically attractive, you actually make more money. We have that data too. You're going to have more energy. You're going to be less sick and injured. You're going to feel like you have a lot more energy. And you will also be more, they call it like measures of well-being and emotional resilience. So while I can't say that you're going to be more confident, because that's maybe going to depend a little bit more on your own like mental and like personality and
but when you say that you can sometimes fix anxiety if there's a lot of inflammation in your body, right? Like I'm not saying it's going to completely eliminate any problem you have, but the healthier you get, like you lower inflammation, you start feeling better. It kind of like
100%.
It's almost like a blanket gets taken off of you.
Yes.
In a way.
Yeah. So there are a lot of the mental health issues are actually spectrums and slide scales where it's like there's like a threshold for diagnostic criteria, but the range is this big, and then it's like, okay, if you cross this, then we're diagnosable. But like some people are really bad, some people have it here, some people have it kind of minor, and maybe like normal healthy's here or something. And so what good nutrition practices will do is they'll bump you down a little bit. So a lot of times that might push you into like subclinical levels. And so you might see a resolution of symptoms for things like anxiety and so on. So some people do actually see a curing of mental health issues. But depending on the severity, if it is like a truly diagnosable, maybe it's a chemical imbalance or something, sometimes nutrition will help, but it's not going to be enough. And you do need some extra support. But yeah, so like the data is very clear, like people who have healthier, better diets. And I've actually created my own eating, I call it the Healthy Gamer Eating Index, where I rank people's diets. It's like a quick questionnaire that I ask you to fill out for me, or like I'll do it in an interview with them. And then I can rank them against this slide scale that I've created for essentially I've tailored it for cognitive performance and like a mental, health and well-being versus like say, some other indices that are out there. Like there's healthy eating indexes that like the government uses. I don't really like those, but those exist. But that is where I got the name. And so like I have one where I can do that and I can rank you and see like, okay, where you're at. And on average, the people who have higher scores, like they report more, this is like scientifically validated, like more emotional well-being, more mental resilience, those kind of things. And, on top of all of the other tremendous benefits that I mentioned. And you don't have to work too hard for it. Like just do the basics right and your score will increase. And I think 95% of esports athletes, there are the select few that I, work with who are amazing. If we can just do those basics, those unsexy basics correct, then you will night and day difference within like a month. And like you will be surprised at how much you can improve in a month if you go from I'm sedentary, I eat McDonald's, I don't sleep, and I have like 50 energy drinks in a day, to suddenly like getting everything right. I guarantee you in a month you like will not recognize yourself if you like start exercising, sleeping, drinking enough water. You know, like you will not recognize yourself in a month. You will be a totally different person. It's crazy.
The grogginess in the morning will go away. Like there's so many, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. The only other nod that I'll give to on the supplement side, unless we want to go into like some very specific ones, is if you live in the United States, and even if you don't live in the United States, go get some blood work at least once a year. And so in the United States, you get one free annual physical per year. So, that's cool. Like, just go do it.
In Canada, you do as well, as long, I don't know if it's one a year, but if you haven't done one in a while, if you go to your doctor, sometimes they don't want to really do it because they'll be like, you're young, you're healthy, because it's all public, right? So they try not to. Just keep being persistent, and they will give it to you. Like, sometimes if you have to pull up family history of diabetes or heart issues, you can throw that at them. I'm just saying I've had problems in Canada, and I know in the US it's different. I'm just trying to, help both audiences. Is like, in Canada, you have to be persistent and push them, or they're not going to do what you want. Sometimes you get a young, nice person, and they'll just do it. But a lot of times you get some middle-aged person, they're just trying to like follow the government recommendations and not to give out too many forms. So it can be frustrating here. I know in the US it's like a little different because you guys pay for it.
Yeah, well, you get the one free physical per year recently, and in the last, like, I can't remember whenever the act was signed, but yeah, so we have one free physical per year, and then even in addition to that, like, I still encourage people to just go get a basic blood work panel done, and based off of that, I mean, if anyone wants to share with me their labs, I'm happy to do a review of it, but if you are deficient, like based off the labs, clinically deficient in something, then you can take a targeted supplement to alleviate that, and that will give you bigger ROI than anything. And what I mean by that is, like, let's say you're feeling low energy, you get some blood work and it reveals, I'm anemic and it's because I'm iron deficient. Okay, let's take an iron pill. Boom, like fixed in like a week, and all of a sudden you feel like a brand new person. So sometimes that it can be as simple as that, where you just take a targeted supplement for whatever you're deficient in. Sometimes these deficiencies are because your diet is not as good as it should be, and sometimes there may be like a genetic predisposition. So some people have like absorption inefficiencies hard coded into their genetics for like a B12 or random stuff like that.
Like just to piggyback off iron is, like, if you're a female or girl watching this, you have a much higher chance of being low iron. It's very common. And my girlfriend is kind of like what you're saying. She's just like, she eats bison every day and beef, and like her iron's always super low, and she'll have to take like 2 or 3 iron pills a day, or else it'll be super low. So sometimes like even supplements are hard to get levels up, and it's just everyone's bodies are different. So that's why blood work is very important. I do agree. And just speaking more about blood work, if you're gonna, you can kind of see what diet works best for your body as well based on blood work. So, like, for example, I'm not recommending any of these diets, but like, let's say you're on a keto diet or a carnivore diet or just a normal diet. If you do blood work at the start of the diet, and then you do it like 3 months or 6 months later, you can see, like, did your cholesterol get better or worse? Like, you can kind of see like how your body's reacting, because like some people do not respond well to ketogenic diets. Like their cholesterol will go sky high from all the fat. And I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, if you eat fat, it ruins your cholesterol. I just know that there are cases where that does happen, and you can use blood work to determine what foods are the best for you, but it takes time. Like you're not going to know that in like a week or 2 weeks.
Typically, when you make an aggressive change to a diet, I will recommend people to get follow-up. If you make an aggressive change to diet or exercise or life in general, you should get follow-up labs drawn in about 12 to 16 weeks. That's about the timeline where you can start to see a meaningful difference. Because if you do blood work today and you do it tomorrow, like I've done this before just to see, sometimes you'll see numbers that just like randomly change out of nowhere, and you're like, wow, that's weird. Why did that happen? And it's because there's inherent variability and error rates and all sorts of stuff like that. So give it a little bit of time to make sure it's a legitimate change in your labs. And if you are curious about those things, like do repeats every, maybe once a quarter or something like that.
Yeah, I just want to throw that in there because a lot of people are like, what's the best diet? And it's like, well, everyone can give recommendations, but
Yeah.
realistically, everyone's body's a little different. Like, I feel
Yes.
really good with high carbs and lower fats. Like, personally, I don't have a gallbladder, so it's like, for me, digesting, fried
Oh yeah.
foods and really high fat diets is difficult. So I
Yep.
feel great on carbs, and if I eat too much fats, I'll feel kind of like sluggish and bogged down. Now,
Yep.
obviously, I have a reason for that, whereas like someone else might be like, man, if I eat as many carbs as I do, they might feel lethargic and sleepy. They want to take a nap, right.
Yeah.
So it's like, obviously that's probably blood sugar related, but either way, like, it is diet related as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, just like,
Everyone. Yeah,
sorry.
everyone will. You're 100% right. Everyone will feel different on different diets, and I encourage people to test them out and see what works for them. There are some broad strokes principles that we can outline, and maybe that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, the end message will simply be, why don't you just go try it? It costs like $2 to go buy like some broccoli at the store or whatever. I keep using broccoli as an example, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I hated broccoli as a kid, so
Yeah, I'm
um,
a spinach. I like spinach. I used to eat a lot of broccoli, but I
yeah,
just like too much gas from all the
yeah,
the whatever the thing is in it. Cauliflower and broccoli they're
yeah,
great. I'm not saying they're bad. It's just like some people, like at my stomach, I'll look pregnant. Like
yeah,
if I eat too much of it, it'll just kind of like distend my abdomen. But
yep.
so just like real quick, so hydration, I would say like what, a gallon, 4 liters a day for most people is like probably like somewhere around
I
um
I My usual recommendation for gamers is, if you are on the smaller side, you should be having at least 2 liters a day, and that's about 64-ish ounces. If you're a normal sized person, then at least 3 liters a day, and if you're bigger, then maybe closer to like 4 liters or like a gallon. Um, these are broad. I mean, because depending on like ambient temperature, how much clothes you're wearing on a day, how much fluid you're getting from your foods, like if you have a soup or if you have a lot of like fruits and veg that have a high water content, if you're sweating a lot, like some people are really really heavy sweaters, some people don't sweat anything, like there's a million factors that go into hydration, and the so those are my broad strokes, like roughly like 3 liters, so that's about 100 ounces, is probably the most common recommendation that I'm giving to people. And then I'll say, in addition to that, you got to add in sweat losses. So like if you are exercising, do 3 liters minimum plus maybe some sweat losses. And you can very simply estimate your sweat losses by just doing like a pre-post weight from whatever exercise you just did, or like if you did a hike or something.
And I mean, it's
Uh,
not super sciencey, but if your urine's dark, drink more water. If it's
yes.
really clear, drink less water. Like,
Yeah.
you don't
Yeah.
want it to be literal look like water. Like,
You do not. Yeah.
you want to be tinted
Yes.
yellow.
Very light yellow. Light yellow is the ideal color. If you are taking like a multi or a B complex though,
Yeah,
or like some pre-workouts, like those will artificially color it yellow so it looks yellow.
like neon green.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you might be overhydrated. And I had someone who was like, man, I'm drinking so much water, but it's always like this yellow. And I'm like, what's going on? And then like he told me what he was taking. I was like, oh yeah, that's because of that. And he was drinking like 2 gallons a day. I was like,
yeah.
gee, like you do not need this much water, bro. Like, come
No,
on.
yeah. 2 gallons a day is like what we do before a bodybuilding show to get us to
Yeah.
start flushing water.
Yeah.
And I've done it. It's hard. It's hard to get in 8 liters of water a day, man. You just feel like
crazy.
you're sitting there just
Yeah.
pounding water. And then like just diet recommendations. And I just want to state for anyone listening is like what he said is like 100% right. Is like, it's not fun or sexy, right? Like a lot of like, drink more water, be healthier. Like these are not like immediate fixes that are going to help you in the very very short term. Like you said about diet, oh sure, you might get some benefits in 2 weeks, which is pretty short in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And definitely worth at least trying. Like you can't eat healthy for 2 weeks to see, like just to see. I think it's
Yeah.
worth it for your pro career, but I do think one of the biggest benefits is like longevity in the sport. Whereas like
Yes.
when you're
Thank
19
you.
or 20, like you could probably get away eating McDonald's and Starbucks and not sleeping super well. I did it, like, and I
Yeah.
was one of the top players. I had some of my best stats when I was just fat and eating pizza and like sleeping 5 or 6 hours a night. Like, yeah, it was bad. I'm not saying you should copy it, but I felt like my body was more resilient back then, especially with sleep. Like, getting less sleep did not impact me nearly as much as when I'm 35, right? Um,
Yeah.
so I think like if you're someone that wants to be like Device or like a player that's going to be around for 5, 10 years, you should be thinking about the future of your career, right? Like in in strength sports and in a lot of sports in Russia, they'll have like literally they'll have like 5 or 10 year plans for their athletes. Like
Yeah.
they'll literally have like your whole career will be almost like mapped out in a way. And in North America, we don't do that, but I almost feel like it's a mistake, right? Like you don't want to peak in your first year, right? Like you kind of want to save some gas for year 4 or 5, right?
Yeah.
Like once you have 4 years of stage experience going to lands, that's probably around when you're gonna peak. I know there's anomalies that like the
Yeah.
first year they come in, but I think for most people, your first year as a pro is probably not going to be your best year, right? Like
You
you're
really
probably going
hope
to
it
build up
isn't.
to, yeah, yeah. You're going to get
Like,
some experience. You're gonna, you're gonna level up. You're going to get like more comfortable doing interviews and going to events and flying, and you're going to join a better team hopefully and kind of like go up and then what? And then your body starts falling apart. You're tired. You can't sleep at events and like people say that esports isn't like a physical sport, and it's really not. But flying and traveling a lot is hard on the body. Like
yeah.
it is, and if you can alleviate that stress just by being a lower weight, like dude, I'm almost 300 pounds right now. It sucks. Like it actually sucks. Like yeah, it's cool, big muscles, right? But flying anywhere, dude, I feel so tired. Like I get up, my whole body's like stiff from these small seats, and like, so I'm just saying, like, I definitely agree with you, but I think like a lot of problems is just like it just doesn't seem cool. It's not like, oh, I just took a pill or I took a new product or like a new supplement,
Yeah.
and like, yeah, everyone wants to fucking mix some powder and water, drink it, and be like, now I'm the best, right? Because
Yeah.
that's easy, right? Like,
Yes.
Stan Efferding, he's like one of my figures I look into fitness. He always says like things you do for yourself is always better than things that other people do for you. So like if like doing this stuff for yourself is harder. That's why people pay people to do like massages, like, but realistically, getting massage is not as useful as you doing stretching every day.
Yeah.
And like, so I just think like for people listening, just like got to put an effort, and you don't have to be 100% right aways, but
Yeah.
you want to be working towards that over time.
If you're taking steps in the right direction, that's literally all I ask. Like, I don't care if it's just a micro improvement, but if you're better today in your nutrition than you were yesterday or this week compared to last week, or, this month compared to last month, I'm happy. Like, I think that's all I can ask for. And I'm not asking you to over index your life into nutrition only, because I think there are so many different subdomains that are, in the health sphere that are also important. And for all of them, they have diminishing returns, right? Like if you're going to say, I'm going to all in on exercise and I'm going to exercise 8 hours a day, that's probably not going to be yielding too much extra results over 30 to 90 minutes a day, right? And same thing for like if you're going to all in on mental. Okay, well now I have no time for the physical. If I'm going to all in on nutrition, don't have time for sleep or whatever, right? So like a lot of these have diminishing returns, and I think if you're doing the most right, that's good. Like put in the bare minimum effort to get the most results. Like that's what you want to do anyway, right? Like so do that with your nutrition too. Like put in a little effort into your nutrition, because you're already putting all these efforts into your scrims, and you're kind of shooting yourself in your foot. Like when you're training, doing like aim training or something, a couple hours a day, and then you decide to go have a handle of vodka and a pizza from Domino's. Like you literally, like your brain's not going to actually consolidate that information nearly as well as if you had actually had smart nutrition on the back end of that learning experience.
And then slept well.
Yeah, and then slept well. Exactly. And the other thing that I would say is, because I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people think they don't think in the long term for their career. Like they want to have longevity. Like everybody says it, but no one actually sets themselves up for success in the long term. Like, oh yeah, I want to be doing this for the next decade. Okay, cool. Well, why don't you show up on time to practice? Why aren't you taking your sleep seriously? Why are you doing all these other like crazy things? And they're like, oh, good point. Yeah. But here's my challenge to even those young kids, where you said, oh yeah, you can get away with it when you're younger. Your body definitely has some flexibility, right? Like, and when you're younger, it's a little bit easier for sure. I 100% agree. That's like a documented fact. But imagine for a second, let's say you were the best, even, right? Like you were the best, but you could have been the best sooner if you had taken everything else seriously, right? Like if you had, like, imagine for a second a world in which you had taken your nutrition seriously and you had taken your sleep seriously and you had done all that. Like imagine how much better you would have been, and then like how much further you could have gone from that launching point, even in like your first year when you were younger. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I always wonder if I was like healthier at the start, like what would happen? Because like there are some events where I did feel like maybe in the finals or like later in the tournament, I was getting a little bit like less able to focus as hard as on the first day or two.
Yeah.
It's hard to know if that's like a jet lag thing, because I do think I'm not one of the best people for jet lag. Like, I'm not saying it destroys me, but we used to fly in one day before an event, and
Yeah,
like you're
that's
playing
rough.
it's you didn't have as much buffer room, and I definitely think jet lag is one of those things that it's kind of like a delay catch up for me. Like the first day I feel okay, and the next day
Yeah.
I get hit, like
Yeah.
kind of like lethargic, but. Yeah, no, I definitely agree, and I know you probably don't have that much more time left, so I don't want to keep you too much longer. Um,
Yeah.
but
We'll
I
have to
was,
set up another one.
yeah, for sure. So for anyone listening, basically, if you want to drop any comments in the bottom and just like, we can do longer form videos about a specific topic. This is just kind of like getting to know him and kind of like talking about some stuff, just like a fun conversation, and then we can go more in depth on like his channel, my channel, on terms of like maybe a deep dive on caffeine or lion's mane or whatever you guys are interested in. But I will just say, like, before, I just have two more things if you just want to quit. I don't know if you specialize in this part, but like, what do you recommend a player that just they want to be better? That maybe they're not a pro, maybe they are a pro. Do you think there's a specific type of diet? Like, obviously, you're saying eating healthy fast, but is there a certain diet you think is preferential to being superior than others? Like, for example, like maybe a lower carbohydrate diet with medium fats, like protein, or is it just kind of whatever you feel good on? Like do you prescribe that? And secondly, training. Like, do you think people should be training like for with weights and cardio? Like, I personally kind of feel like cardio is more beneficial to gamers than lifting, but I think both are somewhat important because I mean lifting is just good for you in general. But I think I think one of the problems is like what happened to me is like you go to the gym and then all of a sudden you want to do all the bodybuilding stuff, and like that's not maybe conductive to being good over a long period of time for gaming.
So, yeah, just to very briefly answer both, and I will maybe give like slightly teasery answers just because
Yeah,
I
you don't have
think
to go super in depth. I just wanted yeah.
yeah, I think they do deserve their own discussions fully, to be truthful. But so as far as diet, like structured diet archetypes, for the longest time, the number one rated best diet for all cognitive measures that we looked at was the Mediterranean diet. This emphasizes things like fatty fish, nuts and seeds, fruits and vegetables, that kind of stuff.
Olive oil, right?
Yeah, olive oils are huge, and consistently. And it's an old diet. Okay, so it's very old. So there's a lot of data on it, and we even know that it helps with reducing risk for things like Alzheimer's disease in the long term, because we have data going back decades now from Mediterranean. It's very old and well established. There is a second diet archetype that is established in the medical literature. Most people have not really heard about this unless they have this specific condition, which is also kind of interesting because it was initially created to help out people with hypertension, and it's called the DASH diet, dietary approaches to stop hypertension. And so the DASH diet was designed to help people fight high blood pressure, and it's good for improving the vasculature, the cardiovascular system of your body, like how well your lungs and blood vessels are pumping blood and doing the things that they need, blood needs to do. And when they started doing like subgroup analyses on the DASH diet, they started realizing that it also improved cognitive metrics. And they're like, this is kind of weird. We didn't expect it to, but it did. And then when you think about it mechanistically, it kind of makes sense because the brain gets, all this lovely oxygen and nutrients from the blood. And so there's a newer diet archetype that I'm a fan of recommending, which basically takes the best elements of both of these diets, a lot of the beneficial nutrients that improve creation of the raw architecture of the brain through the healthy fats in the Mediterranean diet, as well as the nutrient dense foods that are promoted in the Mediterranean diet, which create like better neurotransmitters and signaling pathways in the brain, so the brain can do all the things it wants to do. And then it takes some of the elements of the DASH diet, which improves the vasculature, which gives the brain all this stuff, and you create this kind of like super diet, which is basically the one that I rate my healthy gamer eating index off of. So that's kind of the diet archetype that I recommend the most. And again, I can talk more at length about that and all this kind of stuff, maybe at another time, and what are the specific elements to it. But that's kind of the setting the stage. As far as physical activity, I've worked with enough strength coaches and things to try to give an answer here, but I will say that me, myself, it's not my particular area of expertise, and I would defer to a true expert. But my understanding is somewhat similar to what you have said, which is cardio does seem to be superior on the front end for cognitive function, mainly because it's helping through that vasculature route that I just talked about, which nutrition can enhance with the DASH diet. I have seen other data though, which talks about there does seem to be very specific neural changes and physiological changes in response to different exercise modalities. So while cardio may be good for one thing, weightlifting may be good for one thing, general mobility may be good for another thing, walking may be good for something. They each have different things that they're kind of good at. So if you are trying to get the maximum benefits from exercise as a field in general, I would say from what I've seen that there is a strong case that could be made to try to pull a little bit from each of these, and specifically like, okay, let's do a little bit of cardio each week. Let's do a little bit of weightlifting each week. We don't have to over-index into one or the other too hard. I think there are ways that you can do it, but if I had to pick one, my gut reaction is cardio. But I think that on the metabolic side of things, there's a lot of tremendous benefits that happen when you do weightlifting. So I'm a fan of that because it'll actually allow you to better leverage some of your nutrients from the food, and to make to be able to leverage some of the strategies that I've talked about. You need a fully functioning body, you need fully functioning muscles, and without being generally active as part of your life, you're not going to be able to fully realize the benefits of some of these nutrition strategies as well. I don't know anything about stretching and mobility work, but I've heard a lot of some of like my coworkers talk about them and give programs for them. I just do what I'm told, but I haven't done a deep dive myself into any of the changes that happen from exercise modalities, from stretching and like mobility as a modality.
I can't see it like really hurting you. Like,
I can't see it hurting you either.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah. I mean, I understand. It's like I don't like the reason I asked is just because like I have my own theories about how much cardio and training you should do, but I don't think anyone really knows the answer, if I'm being honest. Like, I don't think anyone can really specifically say, like, this is the right thing to do. Like, I don't think we know yet. At least for esports. Like, obviously, in, like, traditional sports, we have a lot more data, right? Like there's literal ways to train to be, an NFL player, right? Like, they're doing a lot of the same stuff. We don't really have that in esports. I would just say that, like, generally you don't want to be fatiguing yourself and taking it away from your gaming performance. Like, I think that's, like, the one thing you want to be very, like, cognizant of. Central nervous system fatigue. Like, let's
go do some run rep deadlifts right before a game.
Yeah, and I used to think that was fine, but now I like that was just me. I didn't know. Like back in the day, it was just like lift weights. Powerlifting was kind of like trending at the time. Being strong is cool. Like I didn't understand it. But I would just say that like if you're running a marathon, that's probably bad for performance like as a gamer, right? So you want to do everything in like reason, and again my last point will be like when I was pro and I lost a lot of weight, I was doing cardio. I was not lifting crazy heavy at the time. Like I was pretty weak because I'm dieting and I was new to the gym. So I mean, when you start and you're skinny and you're dieting, you don't even really gain anything. But I noticed that like my reaction time got much better when I got skinnier and I did cardio. Like I literally got faster. But I do think at a certain point, I shouldn't have been dieting anymore for my game. Like, I think there was a point where, like, what would you recommend someone that, like, they don't necessarily care about being, like, super skinny or like, you think, like, around maintenance calories is probably, like, good, at least in an event? Because, like, I think some players, they go from being fat to being skinny, but they keep their calories kind of, like, too low because they want to stay skinny because maybe they're insecure or whatever. But like this is a game where if you're not someone that naturally sits at 10% body fat, it's going to be work to be there, right? Like you're going to have to be working, do cardio, eat right to maintain that look. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being 14 or 15 or 16% body fat as a gamer. I think that's still a healthy range. And eating a little bit more so you have some more energy. Like, do you have any thoughts on that? Maybe like going too low or too high with nutrition?
Yeah. And I am going to have to pop off after
Yeah,
the
sorry,
answer
yeah.
this. It's all good. So what I'll say is it's slightly nuanced because it's going to depend on the unique individual and their situation. But in the situation where you outline, you have a bigger person who starts losing a lot of weight. We do know that being in extended calorie deficits, the longer you're in it, it is quite literally just a linear drop off in cognitive faculties. So the longer you're dieting, just keeps going. Like it's just linear. You just keep going.
Yeah.
And the slope of that line, how quickly it drops your cognitive faculties depends on the severity of the deficit. So we've measured the deficit at like I think the military did the study and it was like in 10% increments or something. So it was like 90% of your calories, 80% of your calories, all the way down. So the people who are like essentially eating nothing, it's just like boom. You're eating a little less, like it's boom, a little more, boom, 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 and kind of like so the slope, the severity of the deficit and the duration of the deficit will dictate the drop in cognition and cognitive performance. So if you have someone who goes low and now they're insecure and they're eating too little calories, that's probably true. They need to like come back up to maintenance calories, especially if they're feeling like they have low energy. They need to like come back up and work to have a higher amount of calories to sustain what they is normal for their body. Some people will naturally want to sit at different body fat percentages. I will say that there is something called like the set point theory. And what this stipulates is that the longer you're at a particular body composition, the more likely your body is to acknowledge that as your identity and to want to stay there.
I believe in this, by the way.
So like if you've always been a big boy, then the second that you try to lose weight, your body fights you. Okay. But then let's say you get to a spot that you like. Well, the first day is the hardest and it's going to be hard, but the longer you stay at that decreased weight, the easier it's going to get over time. And if you can stay at that decreased weight for, a couple of years, if you stay under there for like 10 years, whatever, like it's going to become increasingly easy for your body to acknowledge this is like its new set point. And then it will try to defend this new set point. But it's still going to remember the old one. So like if you deviate too much and you're just like kind of fall back into old patterns, then eventually you're going to go back to the old spot. And you're always like, oh, hey, I remember this. I was doing this for the first 20 years of my life. This feels good.
It's true, man. There's a time I bulked to like, I don't know, 245 or something. And then I dieted to like 215, 220. This was just like kind of like a little diet. I went back to eating. I got back to 240 so fast. Like, it was insane. And, like, obviously I looked a little bit better at 240 the second time. Like, usually, because I'm still lifting. If you're still lifting, usually, like, you're going to get some of that in muscle gain. Your body composition is going to be slightly improved. But, like, for a lot of people, though, I could definitely see it being, like, demoralizing. Like, you spend all this time, and then you spend, like, a month eating off the rails, and, like, you're back, basically. So, yeah, be very aware of that, because I 100% believe that one, even though I know maybe I don't know if it's proven or not. That's a thing. Is it proven that the set point is real?
We have a tremendous amount of proven's a very strong word. We have a tremendous amount of observational data which says this is true. A lot of people have this experience. We've seen it. We can note it. The tricky thing is it's almost impossible to design like a randomized controlled trial that tests this thing. Like how do you make someone stay at 240 for 10 years and then come back and reassess them? Like that trial like really can't be done. You know what I mean? So we don't have like good enough. I don't have good enough data to say that the science is yes, but I have enough like practical experience to say that it's basically like, to me it's a fact.
Honestly, if you look at bodybuilding, it's like you'll see like how, like kind of like how true it is. Like even for me, it's like I got up to 290 pounds, and like you have no idea how much food I had to increase. Like mathematically, it doesn't actually make any sense. Like I should be getting fatter, but my body fights me and actually gets me to go down sometimes. And it's like your body will fight you, and it might sound like, oh, what a problem to have. You know, like you can't get like, but like it goes both ways, right? Like it can be hard to gain weight. It can also be hard to lose weight. You can go back very fast, and I think the going back very fast is probably the worst part. Like for people, because you do all this work, and so no, that's really good info.
So the one extra layer that I'll say is specifically in relation to cognitive performance. There is a little bit of a threshold where at least up until 60 days of a deficit, less than 70%. Eating more than 70% of your necessary calories. So like if your deficit is only say 10 or 20% off of your maintenance, then that amount seems to be able to maintain cognitive performance across that duration. It did kind of trend down though. So in the longer term, I suspect that even like 10, 20% will eventually cause a dip. It's just going to take a lot longer. But in season, if I'm working with esports athletes, I try to maintain calorie deficits less than 20%. 25% at the maximum is the most amount of a calorie deficit that I'll tell people is acceptable. If you're doing more than that, literally, you're just going to be dumber and you're not going to realize it, and you're going to be playing worse, which kind of sucks. And then in the short term, I know a lot of players tend to undereat around competition, usually because they get nervous or they're worried, or maybe they might feel sluggish, and that's a whole other issue. And I think that I could talk for hours about this as well. For calorie deficits and all this, you cannot be in protracted significant calorie deficits, otherwise your brain will hate you.
All right, man. Well, sorry I kept you a little bit too long. Sorry I didn't see your message there, but okay. Thanks for joining me, and we'll do a couple more of these videos in the future. So appreciate you coming on, and then we'll try to kind of like specialize our direction. I know this podcast is probably like a little bit over the place, but I kind of just wanted people to listen, hear some different things they might not have thought of, get an idea that obviously you're backing up a lot of what you're saying with studies, and like I wanted people to see that you know what you're talking about too, right? Because like there's so many grifters and people that are just like, do this, eat salmon and avocado for every meal, and you'll be the like I'm just like people just come up with like these random things, and like they'll put PhD in their name when they're not even going to have a PhD. Like
I've seen it. It's actually quite scary, especially in the world of esports. There's a lot of scammers out there, and I try very much so to stay away from that and protect. Like I could talk a little bit about my moral, stances on.
And the reason I like it is because like you have kind of the science and data side, and like I have kind of like some experience of being one of the few I think that's been like fairly overweight, lost weight, gained weight, did strength, like I've kind of done a lot with my body, and I'm not saying I was like the best pro in the world, but I have data in my mind of like when I played better, when I played worse, like things that I thought helped me, things that I didn't, and like maybe some of the science backs it up, maybe some of it doesn't. It's just interesting to kind of like pair that up with my experiences and like some of my teammates, like I've had some teammates that just don't eat food. Like, and they were good. So like they literally didn't eat. Like it was wild. And as a fat guy, I would never understood it. I'm like, dude, we got like, there's KFC. Like, I'm just like, I just didn't understand it. But, so where can people find you if they want to,
I mean, I am notoriously awful at social media, and I genuinely am looking to do better at it. So if people do want to reach out to me, my DMs are open on Twitter or on X. My handle is the esports RD. I also have a website that is terribly outdated, so don't judge too hard, but the content on there is pretty good. It's gamerdiet.gg. I haven't touched it in a few years, and I was looking to update it and aggressively rebrand and refresh it, but I went through a couple web developers and it just didn't work out well. And so if anyone wants to help me on either of those, I am in desperate need of it, because I am so bad at social. My friends used to have to, in high school, people made a Facebook and managed it for me, kind of thing, and I didn't even post. So I'm notoriously bad at that. But feel free to message me, because if anyone wants to talk or set up a meeting with me just to talk about this stuff, I love talking about it. So hit me up, shoot me a message, and I will absolutely talk to you about nutrition things. I'm a total dumbass in other areas, but I can talk about nutrition and supplements.
Which is probably direly needed in this industry. I mean, especially going forward. But all right. So thanks, guys. Follow him if you like the content, and drop anything you'd like to see or any questions you have, and we'll try to figure something out for the future.
Yeah. No, it was fun being here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Peace.